Hello. So today I'm continuing my videos on games I got for Christmas, and since I only got 3, this will be the last one, which as you can see is Everdell. Um, I had put this on my Christmas wish list again as a game that hopefully my family might like to play. They don't like to play more of the, Ameritrash games that me and my gaming buddies like to play, so hopefully the wife and daughter will give this one a shot. We're supposed to play it tomorrow night. We'll see. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and do a setup, how to play, and a couple of example turns. Alright, well, first thing, of course, is put the game board in the middle of the table. And then assemble the Evertree, which there's a little instruction on how to assemble that. And I guess you've got to disassemble it every time you want to pack the game away. So I'm not sure how long the Evertree holds up disassembling it and assembling it. I think I did end up bending this little piece of branch when I assembled it. So again, not sure how long it will hold up, but I guess if it gets ruined, you can just place the cards that go on there on the table instead of on the tree. But anyway, next thing is place the tree on top of the stump there. Alright, next you'll place your twigs, resin, and pebbles and berries on the board. So let me get that done. Alright, got the twigs, resin, pebbles, and berries in their spot. Then you'll just place these point tokens and occupied tokens near the board. Next you'll shuffle up this forest deck, which I've already done, and place 4 cards out on these forest clearing spaces, unless you're playing with 2 players, and then you only place 3 cards out on these spaces. And the unused cards just go back in the box. And you place the 4 basic events on the board in the area they go along the river here. That goes under there. I don't know if you can see them. So the 4 basic events. Then you shuffle this special event deck and draw 4 and place them on the lower branches of the Evertree. So let me get that done. Alright, so I drew 4 special events, place them on that tree, and the remaining events just go back in the box. Then you shuffle the main deck and place 8 cards in the meadow and put the remainder of the deck there under the tree. So I'll get that done. Okay, got 8 cards in the meadow and the remainder of the deck there under the Evertree. Okay, then each player will choose a color and take 2 workers of that color. And then the first player will draw 5 cards from the deck, second player will draw 6 cards, third player 7, and if there was a fourth player 8. I'm only playing with 3 players, so let me get my cards drawn. Alright, each player has their starting workers and their hand of cards. Then each player will place their remaining workers on the top of the tree, 1 in spring, 1 in summer, and 2 in autumn. And I'll get that done for the other players. Alright, so each player has their other workers up here, 1 in spring, 1 in summer, and 2 in autumn. That's it. We're all set up to play, and it says the most humble player goes first. I'll be playing with blue first, white second, and red third. So let's get started on how to play. Okay, well, your choices are pretty simple. on your turn, you can place a worker, play a card, or when you can't do either one of those things, you can prepare for the next season. So as we talked about, each player in setup, each player starts with 2 workers. And there are 2 types of locations that you can place a worker on. There's an exclusive location. It's got this enclosed circle, and a shared location that doesn't have the circle fully enclosed with the brown line. So in exclusive location, only 1 worker can be placed there. And in one of these shared spaces, shared locations, any number of workers can be placed there. So the players will take turns, either placing a worker or playing a card or preparing for the next season. So once you say you place a worker, then the next player gets to take his turn, then the next player, and so on until you reach the end of the game. After you've gone through all the seasons, spring, summer, and autumn, and then you finally have to pass. And once all players have done that, the game ends and you score. So first let's talk about placing a worker. What are the locations you can place? Well, there's basic locations, which this one obviously gets you 3 twigs. This one lets you get 2 twigs and a card. Now you can never have more than 8 cards in your hand. So if you would draw more than 8, you only draw up to 8. You don't draw more and then discard down. You can only draw or ever have up to 8, and that's it. So if you would ever draw more cards, you just don't draw them. Anyway, this one gives you 2 twigs and a card. The space gives you 2 resin. This one's a shared location, obviously. These 2 are exclusive. Here's another shared location. Get a resin and a card. This location is shared, and you can get 2 cards and a point token, 1 point. This location exclusive lets you draw 1 pebble. This location is exclusive and lets you draw 1 berry and a card. And then this location is shared and lets you draw 1 berry. These berries are kind of rubbery. They're fun to squeeze. Okay, then there are these forest locations where you shuffled and drew at the setup of the game, so these will always vary. But this particular one lets you get 2 resin and a twig. Now, normally there's only 1 space available, but if you're playing with 4 players, then 2 spaces are available. And that's the same on each of these cards. So these forest cards will be different every game, since you shuffle and draw 4 of them, or 3 if you're only playing with 2 players. There are also some cards you may play into your city that are destination cards that they actually have a place where you can place a worker and then take the action, whatever it says to do. And actually there are some cards like this one that this may be in another player's city, and since it has this open, you can actually play on this space in their, put one of your workers on this space in their city. Now if they have a card with a location space but it doesn't have the open, then you cannot place a worker in their city. Normally most of them you can only place a worker in your own city. And if you do place one in their city because it has this open sign, then they get a 1 point token. Alright, some other possible locations where you can place a worker is here in the Haven. And this is a shared location. If you place a worker here, you can discard any number of cards from your hand, and for every 2 you discard, you get to gain 1 resource of your choice. There are also these event locations, which we place at the beginning of the game, which are only available once. Once you place your worker there, you just put this in your play area, and then you'll score these points at the end. But to be able to place a worker on this event, you have to have 3 cards in your city with this city governance symbol, such as this crane. You see that provides 1. So once you have 3 cards in your city with that symbol, then you could place a worker on that event and take that event to score at the end of the game. To place a worker on the Grand Tour event to score that at the end of the game, you would have to have 3 red destination cards in your city, such as the post office here. So you would have to have 3 of those. Then you'd be allowed to place a worker on there and score that. So the first worker to take those gets it, and then it's not available for anyone else. Okay, and similar for these two, you'd have to have 4 production cards in your city to be able to place a worker on the Harvest Festival and take that event for scoring. And finally, to get the Cartographer's Expedition event, you would have to have 3 of the 10 Traveler symbols on cards in your city, and then you could place a worker here and take that event. Then there are also the special events which we placed at the setup of the game, so those will be different every game since there's a deck you shuffle. But for instance, to take this event here and to place a worker on there to take this event, you would have to have an Undertaker and Barge Toad cards in your city. Then you also have to be able to, if it requires to pay something, you also have to be able to do that. So when achieved, this one, you have to pay 2 berries and discard 2 cards from your city. So you would have to be able to do that as well as have these in your city before you could place a worker on there. But if you can, if you have all the costs required, you can place a worker there. And then when you retrieve your workers, you take the card and you'll score those points at the end of the game. And again, only 1 card can be taken. It can't be taken by several people. So those are available once, and once they're achieved, then nobody else can get them. And the final spot where you can place a worker is the Journey spot, which is only available in autumn. So when you're in the last season of the game. And then here you can discard a number of cards from your hand and then place a worker on one of these. So if you discard 5 cards, you could place a worker there. These are exclusive. Any number of players can discard 2 and put a worker on the 2 spot, and then you'll score those points at the end of the game. Alright, so that's all the spots you can place a worker. So the other thing you can do, as I mentioned, is play a card. So when you play a card, you can play it from your hand, one of the cards you have in your hand, or you can play a card from the meadow. If you play one from the meadow, then you immediately replace it from a card from the deck after you've played it. But to play a card, you have to be able to pay the resource cost. So this one costs 1 twig and 2 resin. And then once you pay that, you just place it into your city. Now you can have a maximum of 15 cards in your city, and the rule book shows a suggested layout of 3 rows of 5 cards, but you can do it however you want, but you can have a maximum of 15 cards in your city. Now there's some cards that you may be able to play for free. So for instance, if you had paid for and had this fairgrounds card in your city, you paid those resources and placed it in your city. Well, you'll see down here it has this icon that says the Fool. Well, in the meadow we have the Fool card, and it shows fairgrounds. So if you had the fairgrounds and you wanted to play this Fool card, well, you would not have to pay the resource cost. Because you have the fairgrounds, you could just play this Fool into your city. Now when you do that, you need to cover this space with an occupied token showing that you can't do that again. So you wouldn't be able to play another Fool off of this same fairgrounds. Now, you wouldn't be able to do that anyway, because you'll see these show that they're unique. So anytime a card shows the unique characteristic, like unique critter, unique construction, you can only have one of those in your city. Whereas if it has a common, such as this one, common critter, postal pigeon, you could have more than one of these in your city. And when you do play a card, usually it'll have some effect that you'll get when you play it. So for instance, this one, when you play it into your city, you get to draw 2 cards. And actually we were talking about if you had the fairgrounds, you could play the Fool for free, but if you see, the Fool is, you play this Fool into an empty space in an opponent's city. So that actually is going to give the opponent -2 points and take up a space in his city. So you always need to look at what the effect of that card is going to be when you play it. Now some cards, like these traveler cards, they'll take effect when you play it, and then never again. You'll never do that effect again. Some, like these production cards, they will take effect when you play them into your city. You'll get to draw 2 cards. But then again, when you're doing the prepare for season in the spring and in the autumn, you'll see that you'll activate all production cards in your city again. Cards such as these city governance cards, they'll give you a kind of an ongoing bonus. So for instance, this one, when playing a critter, you may discard this innkeeper from your city to decrease the cost by 3 berries. So if you wanted to play this husband card and you had this innkeeper, you could either pay the 3 berries to play him, or since you have this innkeeper, you could discard him from your city and play the husband for free, since he only costs 3 berries and you get a discount. So anyway, these city governments cards offer bonuses or effects that can take effect when you play certain cards. And we already talked about these card types with this paw give you a destination that you can play a worker into. And the final card type are these prosperity cards with this purple flower, and they are worth points at the end of the game. So every card that you play into your city is going to be worth the number of points it shows there at the end of the game. And then these purple prosperity cards usually have some bonus points that they'll be worth, like this one, for each common construction in your city. This one will be worth an extra bonus point for each one of those. So those are, the purple flowers are for scoring bonus points at the end of the game. So like this one, 3 points, extra points if paired with a husband. So you'll get the 2 no matter, but if it's paired with a husband, then you'll get 3 more at the end of the game. So we've talked about playing cards, talked about placing workers. So the last thing you can do is prepare for season. So you start with only 2 workers and a handful of however many cards. When on your turn you can play a worker or place a card. When you can't do either one, if you've placed all your workers and don't want to or can't play another card from either your hand or the meadow, then the next thing you do is prepare for season. So when you prepare for season, you get back any workers you've placed on the board. Then in spring, you get 1 extra worker, put it in your available workers. And then, as I mentioned before, then any production cards you have in your city, you get to activate them. Then again, when you've played all your workers and played all the cards you can, then the next time you'll prepare for season, then you come to summer. Again, you get all your workers off the board that you've placed. You get to take an extra worker and draw 2 cards from the meadow. Now, when you're drawing the cards from the meadow, in that case, normally said when you're playing a card, if you play one from the meadow, then you immediately replace it. When you're drawing cards from the meadow, you have to draw from what's available in the meadow and then replace them with, two more cards after that. And finally, the last season, prepare for season, you'll get 2 extra workers and run all your production cards in your city again. And then finally, when you've then played all your workers and played all the cards that you can after that, then you're done. There's no more seasons to prepare for, and you just pass. Once the last player has passed, gone through all the seasons and passed, then the game is over, and you add up scores. So you'll add up all the base points on cards in your city. Then you'll add up any point tokens that you've taken and have in your play area. You'll add up prosperity card bonuses that you get. If you put a worker on the journey space, you add those points. And if you've gotten any events or event cards, then you'll add those points. And that should be your total, and whoever has the most points wins Everdell. If there's a tie for points, then whoever achieved the most events wins. And if there's still a tie with that, then whoever has the most leftover resources wins. Alright, seems pretty easy. Let's go through. I did play this yesterday, so we'll go through a couple of example turns. Again, the gameplay is easy, but what is a good strategy to do? I don't know. I've only played one game of this, so I can just show you how to play. I don't know the best way to play, but we'll go through a couple of example turns. Alright, so it's Blue's turn. Got 2 workers. Got hand of cards. We have this wife that we could play for free if we had a farm, it looks like. We have this miner mole that we could play for free if we had a mine. But other than that, we've got a castle, which just gives us points. Crane. A post office. Let's see what's up here in the meadow. Well, there's a farm. We know we want that for our wife, and the husband goes along with that. So let's say we want to get this farm. We know we need 2 twigs and a resin. Well, right now we don't have anything, so I think what we're going to do is we're going to play a worker here in this shared spot, and we'll get 2 twigs. Put that in our play area, and we get to draw a card. Let's see what we get. Judge. Alright, well that is Blue's turn. Well, now we're at white. He has this mine, so he wants to, I think he wants to play that, but he needs a twig, a resin, and a pebble. And of course you start out with nothing, so he can come up here. Now he could get this and get 3 twigs. He could go here because that's a shared spot, so another player can also go there and get 2 twigs and a card. But the pebble, we know that pebble's an exclusive spot, so we don't want somebody else to get that pebble before us. So we're going to put our player there and take a pebble and put it in our area, and that's going to be our turn. And finally our third player, I think he wants to play this fairground, so that's going to cost him a twig, 2 resin, and a pebble. Now, we can't get that pebble because he's put that there. White has put his worker there. There are these other action spaces available where he could get 2 of any, but I think he likes this one. He can get 2 resin and a twig. So he's going to get twig and 2 resin, and those go into his play area. So now all he needs is the pebble. So that's his turn. So now we're back to Blue. Well, we know Blue was hoping to play this farm out of the meadow. He got his twigs. He still needs a resin. So I think what he's going to do is come in here and play on this spot and get 2 resin. So now he's got his 2 twigs and his resin. On his next turn he'll be able to play that, unless somebody else gets it first. But anyway, on to white. Alright, well, white, he got his pebble, and he's wanting to play this mine, so he needs a resin and a twig. He's got 1 worker left. He could do that 3 twigs, or he could do a resin and a card, or he could do 2 twigs. Anyway, this one where he gets 2 of any he can take that spot and get a resin and a twig, because he can get any 2. So he's going to get a resin and a twig. Now he has what he's going to need, so that's his turn. Alright, well, red, he got his 2 resin and he got his twig, but he needs a pebble. But I don't think there's a way that he can get it, because 3 twigs is that one. That's not going to help him. None of these help him get a pebble. That one's used. You can't take that again unless there's 4 players. But there is this 1 forest card that he can copy any basic location and draw 1 card. Well, these are the basic locations. So he could copy that one to get a pebble and get to draw a card. So that's what he's going to do. He's going to take that action, copy a basic location. So he's going to copy the draw a pebble one. He's going to draw that, and he gets to draw a card. And that's going to put him in his max. Because being 3rd player, he started with 7 cards, and now he's drawn one that's going to put him at 8. So that's his max cards. But anyway, that's going to end his turn. Now we go back to blue. Now he's placed both his workers, but he can still play a card, and we know he wants to play that farm, which costs 2 twigs and a resin. So he's going to pay his 2 twigs. Going to pay his resin, and he's going to play this card out of the meadow into his city, and that allows him to gain 1 berry. So he'll gain 1 berry, put it with his resources, and then we immediately have to replace that meadow card. Okay, well, that was blue's turn. Now we're back to white, and we know he wanted to play this mine, which cost 1 twig, 1 resin, and 1 pebble, all of which he has right here. Okay, he paid those costs, so he plays the mine into his city, and he actually gets to gain 1 pebble. So I probably could have just kept that. Alright, that's going to be his turn. Okay, now we're back to red, and we know he wanted to play this fairgrounds, so he's going to play that into his city. It cost 1 twig, 2 resin, and a pebble. Alright, he's returned those resources to the supply, plays this into his city, and he gets to draw 2 cards. Now, he can only draw 1 because he had 8, but he played 1, which is going to leave him with 7. And you can't ever have more than 8, so he gets to draw 1 card, and that'll put him back at 8. Okay, that's going to be the end of his turn. Okay, we're back to blue. He's only got 1 resin and 1 berry, and I've looked at all his cards, and there's none that he can play that cost 1 resin and 1 berry. There are no cards in the meadow that only cost a resin or a berry. Well, he actually has this innkeeper he could play for 1 berry if he wanted to. So we'll say he's going to do that. So he's going to pay a berry to play this innkeeper into his city, and that'll give him a power, which we talked about earlier in setup. But now we immediately replace that meadow card with a new one. We got the architect, and that's going to be his turn. Alright, we're back to white. His only resource is a pebble. None of the cards he has only cost 1 pebble. And there's no cards. Now there's one card, Ruins, that doesn't cost anything to play. But then he's got to discard a construction from his city. He doesn't really want that. So there's no card he wants to play or can play. Doesn't have a worker to play, so he's going to prepare for next season. So what he does then is gets his deployed workers back. Then for deploying for spring, he gets 1 new worker. And he gets to run any production cards in his city. Well, he's got 1 production card, which allows him to gain 1 pebble. So he will gain that. And that was prepare for season, so that's going to be the end of his turn. Now I just noticed he could have, instead of doing the prepare for season, because he had this mine, and he can play the miner mole for free, and there is one up here in the meadow, he could have played that card into his city at no cost. But anyway, he didn't do it, so we're on to the red third player. Now he, as we saw in the setup, that he can play for free the Fool. He doesn't have any resources, but because he has this fairgrounds, he can play the Fool for free. It shows if you have fairgrounds. Maybe if I can get it to focus there. And again, you play this into an empty space in an opponent's city. So he's going to play that over here into Blue's city. And that's going to give him -2 points unless he can get rid of that. And then we have to replace that meadow card. And that's going to be the end of his turn. So back to Blue now. Well, Blue has this wife in his hand, which he can play for free due to his farm. So he's going to play that here into his city. Well, we can play it here. And that's just going to give me bonus points. If paired with the husband, it'll give me more bonus points. But now, because we use that to play the wife for free, we need to put one of these occupied tokens on here, so I can't do that again. And in fact, I forgot we did that here with this player when he got the Fool, so we need to put an occupied token on that so he can't do that with another Fool. But anyway, alright, that's going to end Blue's turn. And also you'll notice with this wife card, it can share a space with the husband, so when you put the husband there, it doesn't take up another space in your city. Alright, we're back to white. He retrieved his workers, but he's going to go ahead and he can play that miner mole for free since he's got the mine, and we know there's one up here in the meadow, so he's going to take that miner mole, play it, and that copy 1 production in an opponent's city. Well, in Red City, he could draw 2 cards, and over here in Blue City, he could just gain a berry. So I don't know that he's thrilled with either one of those. But since he's only got 5 cards, I think he's going to draw 2 cards. Now first we got to replace the one in the meadow, and then draw 2 cards into his hand, and that's going to be his turn. So now we are back to red. He doesn't have any workers, he doesn't have any resources, he really can't pay for any cards. The only one he could play for free is this Ruin, but that's going to discard his fairgrounds, so he doesn't want to do that. So now he's going to go ahead and prepare for next season. So he gets his workers back. He gets to take his additional worker from spring, and then he gets to run any production in his city, which the one he's got allows him to draw 2 cards. Unfortunately, he's already got 8 cards in hand, so he's not going to be able to draw 2 cards. But that's going to be his prepare for season action, so he's done. And now we're back to Blue's turn. The only resource he has is this resin. Can't pay for any cards in his hand with that resin. And he can't really pay for any cards in the meadow. Now this ruins, which lets him discard a construction from his city to gain the resources and draw 2 cards. That'd be good if he could discard this fool, but the fool is a critter, not a construction, so he can't get rid of that. The only other construction he has is his farm, and I don't think he wants to get rid of that. So finally, he's going to have to prepare for next season also. So he'll draw his 2 workers back. He will take a worker from the spring, and he gets to run production in his city, which he's only got 1, which lets him gain a berry. So he'll take that, put it in his supply, and that's going to be his turn. And then we go back to white. And that's how the game plays again. So he'll play all his workers and possible cards until he needs to go to summer, do the prepare for season and go to summer, and so forth until every player has gone through summer and autumn and gone through all their workers in autumn and any cards they can play. And of course your city will get built up probably to where you have at least 15 cards. And finally, at the end of autumn, when you have to pass, when you don't have any more cards to play or any more workers to place, then you pass. Once all players have passed, then you add up scores as we talked about earlier in the how to play, and that's how you, and the highest score wins the game. So what do I think of it? I think somebody that's played a lot and knows the cards is going to easily beat somebody that is new to the game, because like I said, I only played it once yesterday, and I had no idea what was the best cards to put out, whether you should try to put out critters before you got the construction that would let you play them for free, whether it was good to go for the events. So anyway, I think this is a game that takes several plays to really figure out the best way to play it and get the better score. But anyway, I think it might be enjoyable. I'm kind of concerned it might be a little too much for my wife and daughter, who, again, they like, something like Ticket to Ride or Long Shot or Celestia, things that are a little easier, but I don't know. I mean, they might be okay with it. Well, actually, my daughter doesn't like playing board games much at all, but sometimes I make her. We did play Wingspan, which was the other game I got for Christmas. They thought it was okay. I don't know how much I'll be able to get them to play it. But anyway, we'll see how it goes with Everdell. Hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.